Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello. What a great thing to do on a Saturday.
Right? Nothing better than to get together and talk about live events on a Saturday morning.
I was thinking nothing better to do than get together to talk about making money on a Saturday morning.
Even better.
In any economy, even a virtual one.
Well, and you know what saying Saturday morning guarantees?
What?
It first off guarantees that this is live. Second off, pretty much guarantees that this isn't going to be evergreen.
True.
So we are really excited that you guys are with us. I see a lot of names. I saw hello from Indianapolis, Chattanooga, New York City, Marlin, welcome, Ninola, Dallas, Texas, Houston, Nova Scotia, fellow Canadian, hello, welcome. Glad to have you all with us, guys. And from Alta. Hey, Alta from Tappan, New York. That's awesome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to today's broadcast. I'm Blue.
And I'm Barry.
I'm Blue and Barry. We're easy to remember.
Really easy to remember, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things
Especially when you introduce us in order, like Blue, Barry.
Right?
It's like hard to forget that.
It really is. And what are the chances that, one person with a crazy name Blue, other person with a crazy name Barry actually get married?
I would say 100%. Clearly, we were meant to be together.
Exactly. Well, so listen, let's dive in because it's a beautiful Saturday. At least it is here in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina.
Like fall here. It's beautiful. I think a lot of the country is experiencing these cooler temperatures. It is so lovely.
It really is.
But we're super excited to be in here with you because it really is one of our favorite topics, talking about a purpose-driven payday. That's how we think of a live event. How do you have impact and income? Purpose-driven payday. That's what we're going to be chatting about today.
Yeah, exactly.
And how virtual events outperform live.
Exactly. And that's really the amazing thing. And I actually want to, there's two things that I would like to say right off the bat. Number one, some of you got here because you saw a video ad that was me frustrated with a MacBook and slamming the MacBook with my fist and throwing it against a wall.
He does have a temper.
I took a little heat for that particular ad, but Did
you take heat? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there were a couple of...
Do people think you're abusing the MacBook? Are you going to reveal what really happened?
I am. I want to tell you what actually happened.
This is a true story.
Yeah. So that was a sadly fully loaded 2019 16-inch MacBook
4 months
Pro.
Old, I think. Yeah.
Yep. And Barry recently hurt her knee, and we were leaving the studio in Charlotte and getting to the car, and I was carrying everything while Barry was on her crutches. And we got to go in the car. I got to the car. I put my computer on the roof. I opened the door. You can see where this is going. I put all of the stuff in. I got Barry in the car.
He took such good care of me.
I really did.
He got me in. He got all my stuff in.
Yeah.
Things were looking really good.
It really was. And then we got to our Airbnb 15 minutes later, and I was like, where's my computer?
Yes.
Turns out that the computer was on the roof of the car.
Yes.
For about a mile. So it held on tight. It was like, no, don't let this happen to me.
Don't do it.
Yeah. And then the computer flew off the car and
into a busy intersection.
Yeah, into a busy intersection. I found it. It had been run over. It was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So
it looked pretty good on the outside considering what it went through.
It did.
But inside, when you turned it on, it just kind of went.
So with that,
and it didn't work. Clearly, it did not work.
Exactly. So with that, I think important to just reveal, I did not ruin a computer for the purpose.
But he couldn't just let it go.
I know. I was like, how can I use this?
How can this computer still serve a purpose? How can it still have life beyond?
Exactly.
I feel like you gave it a good send off.
I did. So anyway, that's what happened with that computer. If you happen to have come here through that video,
you would never hurt.
No, I love my MacBook.
Technology.
I love my MacBooks.
Seriously.
So
in fact, he has a Mac graveyard. Like that is all over our house. Like literally anything.
It's not a graveyard at all. It all gets used.
Yeah, he doesn't like to get rid of it.
I don't.
We've got stashes of it everywhere.
So the next piece is some of you have asked, again, watching the comments on the posts for this particular webinar or broadcast or livecast or whatever we're calling it. And a few people asked, kind of being a little cheeky, I think, of course, virtual events are outperforming live events right now, there are no live events.
Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Right. And
no, we meant in general, like not just now.
Well, and actually being even more specific, we're talking about events that we have taken from live to virtual, meaning
like
they were
we have
live
a year after
last
year
year.
history.
Exactly.
Yeah, or multi-year history, right?
Yep.
We have a multi-year history of them being an in-person live event. And due to COVID-19, we decided to turn them into a virtual event. And the results are amazing. Like even we were shocked at how well they're outperforming in-person live events.
For sure. Beatrice from Albuquerque, welcome. Lynette from Maine, welcome. Glad to have you guys with us this morning. So with that, I wanted to get those two things out of the way because I saw the comments in, like I said, on the posts. First off, the MacBook one was, I thought it was funny, and we figured we'd have a little bit of fun with a computer that was pre-destroyed. Yes. And then the next one, just to put that out off to the side and say to you, we're talking about virtual events that are outperforming when I say their in-person counterparts, they're in-person like comparative events that took place, same host, similar audience, year over year. So it's it's pretty exciting.
Bigger audiences. Bigger stick, and ultimately better sales. So we're going to talk about all of that today and why we think that's true. And I think we're going to be talking about the biggest mistake people are making when it comes to live events.
Exactly. And this is the one that you're just going to have to stick with us through the entire broadcast.
We're going to reveal the biggest mistake that we see a lot of people making right now. Like our phone's ringing off the hook about virtual, and we're watching what other people are doing. And, I do think it's a cool thing about the event community right now is that we're all collaborating and sharing. And so lots of conversation around what is a virtual event. But what we're seeing is that a lot of people are getting it wrong.
Yeah, for sure. So I have
like the NFL draft.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Let's not talk about Roger Goodell in his basement. That was a weird one.
That was a weird one.
I mean, lots of great pre-recorded packages, like some great, but that's all stuff that they do when it's in a big, stadium or ballroom anyway. That scene with Goodell in his basement it was just very disappointing.
It was.
Yeah.
It was like,
for me
just
anyway.
Missed a lot of opportunities there. And, they're obviously not hosting a live event to try and sell something, but at the same time they are. So, that was a lost opportunity. But that kind of leads into who we are and what we do. I mean, if you don't know Blue and I, we have owned Sage Event Management for over 16 years. That's hard to believe. We specialize in purpose-driven paydays, which are 3-day, for the most part, 3-day live events.
Yep.
And for some of the biggest names in the industry, probably people that you have heard of, Jeff Walker, Dean Graziosi, Ryan Levesque, Shanda Sumter, Fabian Fredrickson, Lisa Sasevich.
Stu McLaren.
Love Stu. He just had an epic launch. Love Stu and Tribe. So a lot of names like that, influencers, speakers, authors, influencers in the digital marketing space who are looking to take, we say this all the time, live, love, and leverage a live event. They want to basically use a live event platform to launch a mastermind, a group coaching program, typically a high ticket offer. For us, when we're looking at a 3 or a 4-day event, and that is really our niche, we're looking at helping our host make a high ticket offer. And that is a purpose-driven payday, right? Like we want to have impact before income.
Yep.
And we strongly believe our whole platform is sales is service. So not just selling, but serving, and how those two things work together, which we're going to be talking about today.
For sure. So
I think what's our live event that's made the biggest financial results? I think 15 million in 3 days. So, for you to know that this model, just for all of you who are listening, you might be thinking, I'm not ready for that yet. But the model that we're going to be talking about today, in person and virtual, works for 5, 50, 500, 5,000. We've tested it in different niches. We've tested it in different countries, different languages. What we're going to be talking today works for all of them. So you don't need to be a big name to immediately put what we're going to talk about to work for you.
Absolutely.
But it can be, a pretty big payday.
So let's actually reveal the punchline.
Okay.
Right. Right from the get-go, I want to share some statistics from the first 2 virtual events that we've shared, and we've had conversations with a lot of people who have done virtual events. But our direct hands-on experience with 2 virtual events that we had done live previously. And then I'm also going to share with you a third one, which is from one of our students who is in a course that we have called Rush that teaches people how to host their own live events. She had a smaller event that decided to go virtual, also had some great success. So first one that took place a couple of weeks ago, almost 3-4 weeks ago.
I think so. What's really interesting, we were talking about this, is that I think the COVID announcement for the US anyway was March 13th was when Trump made that announcement. So we're just shy of 60 days. At Sage, we generally do about 30 live in-person events a year, a lot of repeat business for our clients. And so I think in that first 2 weeks, we canceled 8 events, postponed 8 events, renegotiated 22 events. And now we're in a second wave of that. People who were like, okay, I'm in the spring, I'm going to reluctantly have to move. Oh, shoot, I'm in the summer, I'm going to have to reluctantly move.
Yep.
I'm in the fall now. We're talking about I may reluctantly have to move my events. So, we, like most of you, have been living in this space of what do you do with your in-person live event? So for you guys, whether you were planning your first event, like this was going to be the year where you were going to do your first in-person event, or whether you've already been running in-person events and now you're figuring out what to do, for our clients, many of whom, as I said, we've got extended relationships with, there was a lot of scramble around, do we just cancel it and push it to 2021 or later in 2020, or do we host a replacement event? And I think it was probably the first week of April. So we had about 3 weeks.
3rd to the 5th. Yep.
Yeah. So from that announcement on March 13th, we had about 3 weeks to work with one of our trusted partners and clients to take his live event, his in-person event, and transition it to a virtual. And so we're going to talk about some of those stats and then what happened after that.
For sure. So the first event that we took virtual, the year prior had about 300 people in attendance and had generated about $600,000 in gross revenue from their live event. The one that we hosted this year that was virtual had about 4 times the number of attendees, about 1,200 people registered for the event.
Yes.
We had about 1,000 or so check in.
It was 1,023 to be exact.
Yep.
So yeah, pretty good stick number for people showing up and actually checking in for the virtual event.
And then we had 700 to 900 people with us consistently over the course of 3 full days.
Which I think is not too unlike what you might have at an in-person event. Similar size, similar attrition, people that might be in a hallway during part of the session or might be doing something else. We were always tracking at an in-person event, we're always tracking butts and seats, how many people are actually showing up for the session. So when we say 700 to 900 people showed up consistently, we were looking at the metrics for every single session over the course of a 3-day virtual event. Because yes, we did take a 3-day in-person event and turn it into a 3-day virtual event.
And then the actual punchline, they made an offer and generated over $720,000 in gross revenue.
So let's do some quick math.
Well, so that's $120,000 more in gross revenue, but where it really gets exciting.
Yeah, where does it really get exciting?
Yeah.
Because that's better, right? Would you be psyched if you thought you were going to have to cancel your event, all that lost revenue, but instead you quickly pivoted in less than 3 weeks to having a virtual live event.
Yep.
You would have made $600,000 if you were doing the same as you did last year, but instead you make $720,000. But here's the awesome part.
Yeah, the event costs are almost half year over year, because a virtual event, even with all of the stuff that we do for our events, and you don't have to do all of that, is significantly less expensive, more than half as expensive. I always get that a little bit. It's like 50% less expensive. It costs 50% less. How about that? It costs at least 50% less, at most 50%. Yeah, whatever.
It was significantly less expensive.
Less money.
It was half the cost of what it would have been in person.
I have to say it like
there
that.
You go. It's half the cost of what it would have
been.
That's
a much better way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can rely on me for that. I can't do math quickly, but I can do that.
Well, that's solid.
So, yeah. And here's the other thing. I mean, it's just the liability piece. It's not just the math, how much money. It's that you didn't have the hotel contract. You didn't have the room liability. You didn't have the food and beverage minimum. You didn't have that overhead hanging over your head. So again, if you're thinking about doing your first event this year, or you're thinking about doing your next event and growing it, the awesome news is that not only are people showing up, they're actually checking in, and then they're sticking, and then they're enrolling in high ticket offers. They are performing, or even better, outperforming live in-person events, and the net is better. So with less liability.
Exactly.
It's like what I call the trifecta. It's like win, win, win.
And then the second event, and we'll just run through this really quickly and then dive in.
And the second event was 3 weeks later, right? So the second event, just 3 weeks after the one we just described, had very similar metrics. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, so they had about 1,000 people registered for the event this year. When they decided to go virtual, that jumped to almost 3 or just over 3. Had about 2,800 people actually check into the event, and then 2,200 to 2,400 people with us consistently, again, for 3 days, three full days. Yeah. And last year, same client, about $2.5 million. This year, gross revenue from their live event. And this year, they more than doubled it.
It's actually almost triple.
It is almost triple, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's, numbers are still coming in on that event with some post-event sales and working through pay in full and payment plans, which you guys know all about if you know about a high ticket offer. But, conservatively, it's more than double. And I think with the numbers that we're starting to see right now, it's literally almost triple. And when you're talking about triple 7 figures, that is a big purpose-driven payday. Not just the revenue that you're making, that's certainly important, but the impact that you're having. So if you think of the heart of what is a purpose-driven payday, is that we always lead with service first and sales second. So the number of people that we reached, the number of people that we impacted exceeded what we did in an in-person event. And then the number of people who enrolled, who are going to get a longer transformation because they're going to be involved with the host for a year, is significantly higher. So that you're going to get more success stories, which is part of why we do this. It's not just the money, it's the impact.
So what I'd love for you to see out of those 2 quick stories is the fact that virtual events really are, in fact, outperforming their in-person counterparts, right? It really is happening. And the great thing about it is virtual events there's a much lower barrier to entry. So, for those of you who have been thinking, I'd love to host a live event, or, I'd like to get people together and do a live event, but it's a little bit scary because you have to sign on the dotted line with the hotel. There's food and beverage costs, there's AV, there's a bunch of logistics. It can get pretty expensive, and they're a little harder to market, right? Because, people have to get on a plane, they have to book a hotel room. Right. Even if you have a low ticket live event, it still costs usually $1,500 to $2,000 for somebody to show up.
Barter that time away with your family, with your husband or wife or your children that you're going to be gone for a few days. And you're also taking time away from your clients and your work so that you can be fully focused and present in the room. So when you add all those things together, it's significantly more expensive. But now you can have your kids playing in the other room. Exactly. You can put on a good movie and be focused on your...
Well, and what I'd really love for you to see is for you to see yourself being able to do this, and being able to do this in a short period of time. I'm going to tell you one last story. This will take me 30 seconds. And then I promise you, we've got 3 amazing topics that we're going to dive into.
I'm going to hit 3 important touch points that we're going to be teaching you today. But
exactly.
What's your short story first?
So one of our clients who's in Rush,
the Live Event Blueprint. So that's a course on how to do
which I mentioned
live in-person
earlier.
Event. Yeah.
She doesn't listen to me sometimes.
I was listening. I just explained it.
So she had an event planned, a 3-day event. Not a lot of people, about almost 50 people were registered. She decided to postpone her event till the fall, like most people have done. And we pushed her a little bit and said, rather than just postpone, why don't you do a virtual event? And she decided to do a quick 1-day event. She had 29 people registered for her live event. And it was just a 1-day event. This wasn't a multi-day event. And then at the live event, by following the blueprint that we laid out for her actually in Rush, she made a high ticket offer that was a $2,000 offering or $2,400 pay in full or payment plan paid over the year. And she sold 6 people. And, that doesn't sound like huge numbers, but for somebody that had no costs because this was all done via Zoom from her computer.
Had a short runway.
Yeah, she decided to do this in about 10 days and generated a quick, what is essentially $12,000 at a minimum, but will probably be a little bit more with payment plans. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So I hope you can see yourself doing this.
And she can wash, rinse, repeat that now. She now has something proven and tested that she can do again and again.
So let's dive in. Let's start talking about the Purpose-Driven Payday and what that translates to with regards to live events. Barry Baumgartner.
Yeah. So, like I said, we really think of a live event. Well, first of all, let me just say this. We kind of look at live events, both virtual and in person. They're both live events. It's just the methodology of delivery. So a live in-person event versus a virtual live event. So, in both cases, we see them as a purpose-driven payday. We really want to focus on impact before income. We truly believe that sales is service. So if we serve them hard, we can sell them easy. And I do prefer the word enrollment to sales, but for most of us, that's the metric that we're using. If you're going to be making a high ticket offer, generally we look at a high ticket offer as being more than $6,000 for a coaching program or service. Then, that is the payday. But you also, it's pretty rare for our clients to only be focused on the money. They're really focused on impact. They also want transformation for their audiences. They want longevity. They want a legacy. They want people to leave feeling like there was transformation in the live event. And so over the last 16 years, we've come up with a structure that works. Most of our events are 3 days. We really believe in a 3-day format for a high ticket offer. And what we find is people just make it so much more complicated than it needs to be. So the first secret that we wanted to teach you today is don't overcomplicate it. It is not super complicated. A 3-day live event really comes down to what we call the 3x3 PAG, which is there are 3 things you need to do each day. 3 things on day 1, 3 things on day 2, and 3 things on day 3. So the first 3 things that you do are content, connection, and community. This is true whether you're doing an in-person event or a virtual event. The first day, you want to focus on giving them incredibly good content. Over-deliver, not overwhelm, but over-deliver. Lots of great content. We want them to have so many ahas that they can't wait to get home and start implementing. Then we focus on connection. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about connection?
Well, it's interesting because the next 2, connection and community, tend to be a little bit more difficult in an online space. And I think a big part of what we're going to talk about in the third segment, which is how to actually create that connection and that community early on to get people to stick, is really, really important. But so many people, when they come to a live event, they're actually coming not just for the content, but for the connection and the community. And to get raving fans, it's not about the content actually, because anybody can do good content, but it's about creating connection with your fellow attendees, both with each other and also with you, and also creating a community so that people want to keep coming back.
And I think a key to an enrollment event is that connection piece on day 1 also has to get them connected here, right? Connected to their bigger vision of what they can do. They need to be even more enrolled in themselves for them to enroll in you, right? So I'm not going to pay you to help me do something if I don't believe I can do it in the first place. So a big part of content, connection, and community on day 1 is enrolling them in a vision of what they can do, believing that it is possible, whatever it is that you do, whether it's dog training or personal development or business development, it really doesn't matter. Content, connection, community, and that belief that they can do it. And then that feeling of being surrounded by like-minded people. We just see that so many people are missing that in their life. You might have an incredible family, incredible friends, incredible neighbors, but a like-minded community of people who are trying to do the exact same thing that you're trying to do. Yeah, what were you going to say?
Well, I was actually, speaking of like-minded, one of the questions that Jody had in the chat, and I'm watching the chat as we talk. So if you see me looking down at a computer, it's because I'm keeping an eye on the comments that you guys are sharing. So please keep doing that. If you have questions, if you agree with us, give us a thumbs up, give us if you're watching on Facebook, give us a heart. But Jody, one of the questions that Jody had, speaking of community, was what was the age demographics that we're working with? Our clients tend to have a slightly older skewed demographic. So much like yours, they are not your millennials, or is it Gen Z? Is that the?
Yeah, and honestly, the first event that the lead case study that we mentioned, the very first virtual event we did, that audience specifically is a lot of what we think of as second chancers, meaning they're retirees who are getting like a second business started to create retirement income. So they've already gone through their corporate lives, their kids are grown, so they really skew on the older side. And so you would think that might be a challenge for a virtual event given the tech, but we're going to explain today why that's not the case.
Exactly. And then Samberland, I do see your comment about how do you keep the energy up. That's part of creating connection and community. We're going to be covering that in a few minutes. So
definitely. So day one, content, connection, community. Day two, we're going to do that same thing. More content, more connection, more community. But then we get into like midway through day two, you're halfway through the 3-day event. And that's about the time we find a tipping point where people go from, I can't wait to get home and start implementing, to, wow, I have to go home tomorrow and start implementing. So it goes from, I'm so excited to get home, to, I have a lot of ahas. We've given them incredible content, connection, community. They have a list of ahas. They now have to go home and implement, and prioritizing those can be overwhelming. So day two is all about pain, solution, and invitation.
Yep.
The pain is, now that they're connected to that higher vision of themselves, they can see where they want to go, but they know where they are. And the gap between where they want to go and where they are creates a certain amount of pain. Like, I'm in pain over seeing where I want to be, but knowing I'm stuck right here and that I have to go home tomorrow and figure out how to do it. Like, you've told me how, but now I have to actually go do it to stay in this momentum and this energy. Well, the solution is only you can do the work, but you don't have to do it alone. And there's no time like now to get started. So we have an invitation for you. The invitation is the high ticket offer. So if you really just drill it down to its simplest form, day two is about giving them more content, connection, and community like you did on day one, which creates a pain. And you have the solution in the form of your invitation. It is that simple. Don't make it more complicated than that. And then on day three, it's our last day with them. Of course, we're going to give them more content, connection, and community. But now we're getting into what I call decision, commitment, and celebration. And the decision is, because remember, we're all about service. We want you to decide to do something differently. Don't let this be 3 days wasted. Like, commit to this morning, decide this morning, what are you going to do differently when you get home so that you can have transformation? But if you've decided it's to work with us, the offer, the invitation, then we want you to commit today to doing it. And we're actually going to celebrate with the welcome lunch. Like, we literally start the program today at this live event at the welcome lunch. And of course it's a celebration. Like, you're so happy for them. They've decided to commit to themselves first and to you second. And now you're celebrating with them, because now you're going to work together with a group of like-minded people, their community, to get the work done over the course of the year. So that's a 3x3 PAG: content, connection, community, pain, solution, invitation, decision, commitment, celebration. It is literally that simple.
And a lot of you may be thinking to yourself, okay, that works in a live event environment, but I'm telling you, based on the experience we've had, based on the experience I know some of our other clients have had with virtual, it works the exact same way virtually. Yes. So we're teaching you something that not only does everything that you just heard work in a virtual environment, but once you get comfortable virtually and you decide to open the doors to a live event,
to an in-person event, yeah,
you can take that same structure and apply it to a live event. So the beautiful thing, I think personally, yes, not to toot our own horn too much here, but I think the really cool thing about what you're hearing today is that so far what we've taught doesn't just apply to virtual.
So
it applies.
It's kind of the keys to the kingdom.
Oh, it really
is.
If
you're going to be doing live events, whether they're virtual or in person, now you know the structure that allows you to make a high ticket offer. And the other thing that's equally true is that the same thing that works in a high ticket offer and in person works in a high ticket offer virtually, which is, we boil it down to what we call the ACE model: accountability, community, enhanced opportunity. People want to buy an offer. They want to buy an invitation. They're willing to enroll when you give them accountability, so they'll actually get the work done.
Yep.
When you give them a like-minded community, and when you give them a sense of enhanced opportunity, because they're working with you, they're going to be able to be more, do more, have more, and make more. It's that simple. So now a high ticket offer boils down to ACE, and a 3-day live event boils down to the 3x3 PAG, and it works in both environments. So you can literally pivot in between the two. It works in both places. We love that. Like, to me, that's like fantastic to know that it's that.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit about the third segment because we've covered your purpose-driven payday. We've covered the structure for a 3-day live event. And I will say this, if you are thinking about going with a shorter event, instead of doing 3 days, maybe you just want to dip the toe in the water with a 1-day event, a lot of what Barry just covered, you just kind of accordion it down, right? So the morning becomes about content, connection, community. The afternoon becomes more about pain, decision, and what was the other one?
Pain, solution, invitation.
There it is.
It happens right after lunch.
Exactly.
So in the morning, content, connection, community. After lunch, pain, solution, invitation. And then you wrap up the day with decision, commitment, and ideally a celebration, which could come in the form of a reception. So super easy to take that 3-day and just condense it into one.
So when we are talking about virtual experiences, virtual events versus in-person, Barry and I have found so far that they are really about 80% the same. I don't even like to call virtual events because they are so much, it's difficult to explain these virtual experiences that we're providing for our hosts and that you can do as well by just calling it a virtual event. Because when you hear virtual event, you hear you think something like what we're doing right now. And what we're doing is great, right? We've got, YouTube, we've got Facebook at our disposal, and we can broadcast out really, really easily. But what that doesn't provide you with is that connection and community that we were talking about in the 3x3 PAG, which requires interaction. So there's some of you who are asking, what platform are you guys using for your virtual events? And right now, you remember the expression, if I had $1 for every time I heard that, right? So if I had $1 for every email that I got over the course of the last month saying, hey, check out this new platform about virtual experiences or virtual events, I don't know how much I'd have, but I'd probably have at least $1,000. But here's the thing. Most platforms out there are not good. And the reason why some of them are kind of gimmicky.
They're overcomplicated. I've seen a couple, one called Verbella, which, is cool looking to a certain extent. But for those of you who may remember a platform called Second Life from about, 15 years ago, it's basically Second Life except for live events. Listen, and I think there's a place for all of those. I mean, to not, sell them short. I mean, I think all these different platforms coming out and the innovation around them is awesome. And there's an opportunity to use them.
Yep.
But when it comes to a purpose-driven payday, when you're running an enrollment event and you are basing it on content, connection, and community as the base level sales as service approach to make your high ticket offer, keeping it simple and keeping the experience and interactivity up is important, because here is lesson number 3, which is experience is the new currency in a virtual economy, right? So for what we're doing right now, experience is the new currency. It is the most important thing, because experience equals engagement and engagement equals enrollment. Mm-hmm. So we want to work really hard on creating amazing experiences that translate into interactivity for content, connection, and community. We want to try and, you can't really replicate it. It's not going to be like an in-person event. You want to virtualize it. Like, what's a virtualized version of content, connection, and community? And the simpler and easier it is, the more likely the attendees at any age, any skill set can embrace it and become part of it. Really critical.
So to close the loop on the platform that we have found through, a ton of research over the course of the last, it's been almost 60 days now since March 13th, and we decided we have to go.
So much would change in literally less than 60 days.
Well, and Barry, you said it in an email that went out earlier this week. If somebody had said to us, 2 months ago,
right,
that virtual events could provide you with almost the same experience and better financial results than in-person events, I would have said, no way. There's absolutely no way. But I really, we really are sitting here going, that's not the case. That it is actually true that is possible. So platform that we are using right now as our platform of choice is Zoom. And, it's not sexy, right?
I think it's sexy. I think it's sexy because it's easy. I don't want to work too hard, right? I want it to be easy. I want to just click a link, use a platform I'm familiar with and be able to roll with it and not have to do a bunch of downloads and education. I've got enough to figure out right now without trying to learn a new platform. So to me, simple is sexy. I love that.
Well, well, there definitely is something to that. So yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is it's not sexy in terms of it's not this 3D environment like Verbella is, or like some of the other platforms are.
There's
or
like Sococo and there's a number of them.
And they're not bad. I just don't think they're great. Especially, Jody was asking about a slightly older demographic. If your attendees or your audience is in the 40 plus range, I think you have to keep it with an easy tool that provides what I call a frictionless experience. And Zoom really is frictionless. And the great thing about Zoom, and we're talking about Zoom meeting, by the way, not Zoom webinar. Mm-hmm. Zoom meeting, one of the great things about it is it provides right away one of the experiences that attendees love. Because Barry mentioned that the difference between online and offline events is about 80% the same. The 20% comes down to tech and touch. And we think that breaks down between the audience experience and the host's experience, because you really have to think of it from both perspectives. Don't just think of it from the perspective of your attendees.
Which is an easy mistake to make. You're focused on service and on delivery, so you're really focused on what's the attendee experience and how can you replicate or reinvent that or virtualize it.
Yeah.
But really important is your experience as the host, because if you aren't feeling great, if you're not feeling highly engaged, if you're not feeling interaction with the audience, it's super hard to deliver amazing content.
Well, exactly. And, think about it. One of the things that is really tough, especially for a 3-day event, we're doing this broadcast. It's going to be about 90 minutes or so. We've got another 45 or so. We're about halfway through.
Could you sit here for 3 days? Even though we love what we teach, could you sit here at this desk for 3 days? And
it would be tough, to not be able to move. I love to move when I talk. I like to stand at the very least. Yeah. And I also like to move around a little bit. So one of the things that is really important if you're going to be doing this, and I hope you are, is to think about your experience. We'll get to that in just a second.
But I don't want you to miss that point Blue just made. So we talked about if experience is the new currency in this virtual economy, then what is the experience, virtual versus in person? And again, going back to what we taught you on the 3x3 PAG and talking about the sales as service methodology for a high ticket offer, 80% is the same. 80% of what you do at an in-person event versus a virtual event is the same. The 20% that's different comes down to two things: tech and touch. So the good news is whatever you're learning for this virtual economy is going to translate to the in-person world. And whatever you already knew about in-person events, 80% of it's going to translate to virtual. I think that's great news. You don't have to completely reinvent yourself now or in the future. But that 20%, that tech and touch, really does make a difference in experience, which translates to engagement, which translates to enrollment. And since we're all about enrollment and about serving people, let's talk about that tech and touch piece. Like, what needs to be different?
For sure. And also, let me just answer a question. Maynell said, but Zoom does not give you a high quality feed. And let me answer that by saying it actually does. And there's two ways to look at this. Number one, it's not giving you a 4K, streaming experience, but very few platforms do. Facebook streams at a max of 720p. But I will tell you that Zoom, yesterday I was on a Zoom call with somebody in Portugal, and looking at the video statistics, it's streaming at about 50% of that quality, which is still amazingly good. Zoom, YouTube, all of the platforms right now are actually scaling back their resolutions, just because with everybody being at home, there's a little bit more volume, a little bit more pressure on the infrastructure. So that's not unique to Zoom. That's pretty much all platforms.
But I don't think we had a single complaint about quality.
No, and
either of them.
And between the two events, we've had a total all attendees of over 4,000 people actually show up. So
yeah. So not something to be worried. Do not let that hold you back. That is is not something to be worried about.
Yeah, exactly. And from a recording perspective, make sure that you there's settings inside of Zoom to record a high quality version on your computer. You just go into the settings for Zoom. There's a bunch of areas that you can do that in. And I'm not going to go deep on the tech for that. Zoom has an amazing tech support team. If you can't find it, just pick up the phone and call them or use their chat, and they'll tell you exactly where that is. But you can record a good quality audio feed for use for future. So, from an audience perspective, let's talk about the things that we did that got them to show up. Because one of the things that is really, really important when we talk about that 20% is attendance. And most people are used to lower attendance numbers virtually than they get in person. And I'll use this broadcast.
Why is that? It's because they don't take it as seriously, probably, right?
For sure. And I'll use this broadcast as an example. We had about 400 people or so sign up for this broadcast, just like you guys did. And between Facebook and YouTube, there's about 120 of you with us. So not a huge number, but in line with what I would expect from an online free training, about 20 to 25%. It's a little higher right now because most people are at home. Some days are a little bit higher as well. It's usually about 15%. Right now, you're getting 20 to 30% attendance for that. But for a live event, in order to get people to show up, you want to do a couple of extra things. And one of the things that we did, and this was a decision that our clients made early on, is to actually ship a physical thing to we call it a swag box, a swag box to the attendees who signed up for this.
And why would you do that? Because listen, it's more expense. You've got to put more effort in.
For sure.
Why do you think that's so important?
Well, why I think it's more important or so important is because the reality is email reminders get lost. You know, we sent out 3 email reminders for this particular broadcast if you signed up yesterday. If you signed up today, you probably only got 1 or 2 of them. But those email reminders tend to get lost. They get lost in the clutter or junk box. They get stuck in the promotions folder. Maybe you don't see it. Maybe you get it an hour earlier, and now all of a sudden you're talking with your kids and you forget that it's happening. So email reminders.
Some reciprocity too, don't you? Like, would you be more likely to show up today if we'd sent you a box of goodies? I feel like maybe you would.
Well, here's the thing. If we'd sent you a box of goodies, if a guy from FedEx or a FedEx guy showed up at your door, knocked on your door and handed you a box that said, you know, this is for your live event that's happening in a day, that's the best reminder we could possibly do.
Yes.
Right. So what that's translating to is those numbers that we're talking about with 70 to 80% of the attendees who check in actually showing up. And from an attendance perspective, that's hugely important. The next thing that we did to get people to show up is we mentioned it, a check-in process. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't have to be complicated.
And we almost skipped it. And then we thought, the very first event, if we were having an in-person live event, we would never just be like, come on into the ballroom. Like, anybody in the hotel who wants to come. Anybody that shows up, come. You have to go through registration. Have you been to a live in-person event where you didn't go through registration, check in, pick up your badge, get the details for the event, and then you go into the ballroom? Probably not. I'm guessing not. At least you wouldn't do that at a Sage event. And so when we virtualized it, we're like, we have to have a check-in process. We want them to show up in advance. We want to know how many people are showing up, and we want to teach them how to show up to a virtual event. So let's talk about that.
For sure. And actually, success story from the box, Bridget, who is in the, or Brigitte, I'm not sure how I pronounce your name, in the chat said, yes, I got that box 2 days before the event, and what a pleasant surprise. Or she was pleasantly surprised, right? So it's definitely something that people don't expect.
And it differentiates it from a webinar, a teleseminar, a telesummit.
Yeah. And in terms of resources on where you can get that, there's a ton of branding companies. Just look for a good branding company out there. Just Google branded product and you'll find a ton of them.
Fans of 4Print, really like 4Print.
Oh, 4Print is awesome. Yeah. Yeah, actually, absolutely. They're fantastic. Let's see. Where was I going with that? I lost my train of thought for a
We're going
second.
to talk about registration
Oh, yeah.
and check-in and why it's so important and a little bit of how you did it.
Thank you. This is what happens. I kind of wander and Barry pulls me back on track. And when she wanders, I do the same thing. It's good to have a partner.
It is.
Yeah. All right.
Especially when they're your spouse.
And especially when you like your spouse. That's even more important. All right. So registration for the day before, and actually in our case, because we had relatively large audiences, for 2 days prior, we gave our attendees a registration link to go to, which was essentially a Zoom meeting where a member of our team would welcome them and do a quick tech check with them. So we were checking them in, but really the reason why we did this initially was we didn't want to start the event at 11 o'clock in the morning, which is Eastern time, which is when we started that event, and have 30 minutes of, I can't hear you, I can't see you, how do I unmute myself, how do I turn on my camera? We wanted to start with a bang, really start and go right at 11 o'clock. So we said,
not be sidetracked by tech, I think is really critical. You don't want their first experience to be showing up for the 11 o'clock start and they're not really getting engaged until 11:30 and your team is getting swamped with technical requests because things aren't working.
Yeah.
So I had huge fear around that we would be sidelined with a lot of tech problems. And this eliminated it completely. Both of the virtual events that we hosted, we started on time with no challenges because people had literally been walked through. Do you know how to mute and unmute? I need to see you. Let's get you to turn your screen on. Let me explain how you turn your video on. Make sure that they know that the host is going to be able to see them. Like show up ready because the host will be able to see you.
Yep.
Make sure they know how to raise their hand. Like all these basics that if you live in Zoom world, you would know. But if you don't, we want to make sure we walk them through so that they're super clear on how the tech works. Not to mention, here was, I think, one of the surprise things. The engagement was so much higher. I think we spent much more time per person.
It really was. It was really interesting because what wound up happening, again, we did it to eliminate the tech. I'll tell you, it's not actually the reason we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
The reason we're going to keep doing it is because it really created a touch point with our team, and the attendees. And all of a sudden, again, first they get a box, and there were a couple of questions like what was in the box. So there was a branded notebook, there was a branded pen. One of our clients, had a workbook,
a door
hanger that said, "Shh, I'm busy learning in here," because we know so many people are at home right now.
Some cutout emojis that they could use to emote to the audience or emote to the host.
Yeah.
Any number of things. I mean, there were some stickers. I think it depended on the host. A couple of our hosts, like we have one coming up next week who's doing it slightly differently. So, but you can have collateral in it. You can have brochures in it. I would really, though, my personal opinion on swag is that it needs to be good quality.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to send them a box, I'd rather send them a box with one great thing than 10 not great things. So I think it's really important to work with a trusted vendor to come up with great swag with the form follows function. It's either so great they're going to love to have it, or it actually accentuates and seeds the experience they're going to be having with you. So they're even more excited to show up. Because like, what are we doing with this? And how are we going to use this? Ideally, it does that.
Yeah. So between having this, this great swag box that is the ultimate, email reminder essentially.
And it was, kind of a surprise. It wasn't like they'd paid an extra fee to get that. Like
Exactly.
That was included in their registration.
Exactly. The other thing the other reason that we're going to do that check-in process is to create that touch point, because now we've differentiated it completely. Before the event even started, this is no longer a webinar, right? This is no longer just a live stream, and this is a great experience, hopefully for you, but, because we're watching the chat and we are interacting, but it's not as good as actually all of a sudden, wow, I got a box in the mail. I already spoke to somebody, and now I'm ready for my live event tomorrow. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So, part of our team, we had a little script that we wrote out that reinforced some of the things they were going to be learning, what time the event started the next day.
With the team in t-shirts so that they were, branded team.
Yeah.
I think we ended up with, probably 8 team members to check in. You don't have to do that though. You scale it based on the size of your event. Mm-hmm. But the key is they even knew how to check in multiple people at a time. You might have a few people show up at the Zoom room. Think about it. If your day one is about content, connection, and community, think about the opportunity of having 5 people show up to check in and you introduce them to each other. Hi, Bob. Meet Judy. Meet Jill. Meet Sandy. Where are you from? Where are you from? Okay, great. Let's do this together. Let's make sure we can see you on your video. Let's make sure you know how to mute and unmute. Now, all of a sudden, there's 5 people that they know that they met through the registration and check-in process. We also found that people would visit our team over and over again at Help Desk because much like an in-person registration, they'd established a relationship. So if they had a question about when we're coming back or what's coming up next or what to do, they would just go to our Help Desk to see the people that they got used to seeing when they checked in. It was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And Tanya says that it makes it more personable, tailored, and human. And
Absolutely.
Tanya, that was the point. You know, we were really trying to make this different because the moment it's make it an online experience, not a virtual event. So, you know, with that, all of a sudden, now you have a much higher show up rate. Instead of just having 25% show up rate, you have 75 to 80%. And the more people show up, the more people you can serve. And the more people you serve, the more people want more from you. And if they want more from you, when you present your high ticket offer, you get higher conversions. So Absolutely. We reverse engineered everything. And when you're thinking about your live event, I want you to do the same thing.
So let's talk about, that's how we got them to show up. Mm-hmm. In addition to having amazing content and really working on, you know, how did we deliver experience to keep them? Let's talk about that, because this is where the tech and touch piece, things being slightly different, 20% different at a virtual event come into play. We introduced something that we don't traditionally do at our in-person events that we did at our virtual events, which is gamification.
Oh, I thought you were going in a different direction. So yeah, we're going to share. I want to talk about gamification, but I also want to talk about breakouts really quickly.
Okay, great. Let's talk about that.
So from a gamification perspective, we did something, as you can probably imagine, some of our clients, especially with the budgets that they have, we did some things that you don't necessarily need to do, but are great if you can. So we did something called gamification. We did a debrief a couple days ago, and Julie, was it Julie who mentioned the word funify?
Yeah, I love that.
Which funify. I much prefer.
I think gamification equals funify. How do you funify the event?
Exactly. So we tracked actions. You know, when people shared something on social media, when they showed up for the event and clicked on the ballroom, when they connected with some of our sponsors, we devised a process by which we collected that information and gave them points, and then used those points to give them prizes throughout the week. And it was, you know, kind of like, have you ever been to an event where when you check in, you get a raffle ticket? And one of the ways that they try to get you in the ballroom on time is by pulling a raffle ticket, and they have some great things that they're raffling away. But if you're not present, you don't win. So kind of the same thing. You had to be present to win. And we had some fun with that. For one of our clients, we actually also included a raffle ticket in the swag box that was glue dotted to the welcome letter.
I love that.
Yeah, and then we had the other half of the raffle ticket in our studio, and the host actually would pull a raffle ticket. But same thing, you had to be present to win.
And then when you get that raffle ticket, you're like, how is this going to be used? How does this work? You're not expecting that for a virtual event. It just ramps up the interactivity and the engagement and the experience.
For sure. So lots of great ways that you can funify.
By the way, that's not expensive. You know, like something to keep in mind is I don't think these have to be expensive.
Well, and listen, I also, you know, we did it in a more complicated way. There's nothing stopping you from funifying the process just by having a free Facebook group and, you know, encouraging people to post a photo in the Facebook group and then rewarding people for taking that action. Right. It doesn't have to be points. It's just about finding a way to track an action. A simple
version of that would be having your team track anybody who puts a social media post in about your event and then put their name into a hat where you're basically going to draw from that. So they're rewarded for taking that action. I think the heart of funification is engagement.
Ooh, funification.
But yeah,
you're going
on. It's funification. So I think the heart of it is increased engagement, but also rewarding them for taking action. When we want them to stay active, we want them to take the right actions, to do the exercise, to show up on time, to be engaged in the room, to post on social media. So when they do the thing we've asked them to do, we give them points. Now, we have a sophisticated dashboard that allows it to automate the point reward, but you certainly could do that on a much simpler level. And then have prizes that you're giving away. And again, they don't have to be super expensive. Just a giveaway that keeps them engaged. I think it is helpful to have a leaderboard where at the end, the person who has the most points, again, your team could be tracking that by hand if they need to, but essentially it qualifies them for a really amazing gift at the end. So whoever the winner is, and that amps up the competition, which again, keeps them engaged, not just on the first day, but also the second day and the third day. Must be present to win. So you're giving them rewards and gifts throughout, which is awesome. And it's all building toward one master reward at the end.
For sure. So the last thing that we did that I think really provided an amazing experience for the attendees, and I see a few of you were at this event, and were the event that we just did a week ago, and have already mentioned it, and that is the breakout rooms. So one of the reasons why we love Zoom as a platform, other than the fact that it's easy to see each other, right? So you can make visual connections, and they've got a built-in chat and so on and so forth. The other thing that is really amazing about Zoom is regardless of the level of Zoom you have, doesn't matter if you have the free version, the business version, or the pro version, they have a feature called breakouts. And breakouts allow you to take your audience and break them into smaller groups. Depending on the size of your meeting, you can have as many as 50 different breakout rooms. So if you have an event and you have 200 people at your live event, you can take them and put them into small groups of 4 or 5 and allow them to workshop with each other, allow them to network with each other, allow them to meet each other the same way they would at live events. So this allows for, again, the connection and the community, because not only do they get small group masterminding, which is always valuable in almost any scenario, but they also get to meet their fellow attendees, which isn't necessarily something that happens even in this chat, right? Where, I see Susan, I see Lynette, I see Anna, I see life coach Gloria, I see Kevin. I see you all here, but we're not really meeting each other, right? But if you sit with somebody for 15 minutes in a networking exercise or in a workshop exercise and you start talking with them, it becomes much more personal. So Zoom's breakout capabilities are really fantastic and easy to use. Again, we're looking for frictionless.
Advantage, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you think about an in-person event, if you've been to an in-person event before, one of the things our team works tirelessly to do is get them out of the room on time and get them back into the room on time. So you've got a cue song, you've got someone chiming in the hallway, you're making announcements, you're tapping shoulders. The great thing with a Zoom breakout is you send them into the breakout, they go. You send them, they don't have to do anything. And then when it's time for them to come back, it gives them a 1-minute reminder and it dumps them back into the general session room. So it's so much faster and easier to take breaks or to do breakouts, because you can really control where they're going and how quickly you're bringing them back. And I mean, for me, we saved so much time in that, which allowed us to have a compressed schedule so the days were not so long. I do think you want to compress it a little bit. Like a normal 12 or 14-hour day, we condensed into more of an 8-hour day. When we virtualized it. So that's an easy way to do that. But I also think about the fact that if you ever go to a Sage in-person event, we 9 times out of 10 are going to set it crescent rounds. If it's not crescent rounds, it's probably theater style. But crescent round is a round table that we set only half of the table, the half that's facing the stage. So no one has their back to the stage. It's honestly a breakout room in Zoom where you have 6 to 8 people is the equivalent of a crescent round. So if you think about being the host and giving someone an exercise and say, you're going to go around the table and do this exercise, now you send them into a breakout room and they go around the table. Essentially, you give them specific instruction on how to get started and what to do. And then you bring them back and you have shares at the mic, just like you would do in an in-person room. So now you've ramped up interactivity and engagement, which really does at the end of the day help enrollment.
Exactly. So those are some things from the attendees' perspective. We did other things as well. We had Q&A sessions over lunches. We had in both cases, we had a coaching zone where attendees could have a one-on-one conversation with a member of the client's coaching team, which was pretty cool, and a few other things that
Sponsorship.
That really, well, sponsorship was great because it helped pay for the event before it took place.
So if you're thinking you can't do sponsorship in a virtual event, no, that absolutely can be virtualized too. And here's the crazy thing. Our sponsors raved about the experience. They said it was more interactive. They said they had more engagement. We actually had attendees asking us for more time with the sponsors. That's never happened at an in-person event. I think the first event where we had sponsors and we'd virtualized it, an hour after the event had ended, we still had 100 people chatting with sponsors. So 100 out of a blended average of 800 people still sticking around an hour after the event had ended, talking to sponsors in their individual breakout rooms. And that extra hour had been added at the request of the attendees. So delighted sponsors, delighted attendees. The sponsors are served, the attendees are served. Sales and service.
For sure. The next thing I want to share with you is talk a little bit about this from the host's perspective.
Yeah. I saw a couple of questions in there about being like, what if I'm a one-man show?
For sure. And we're going to talk about whether or not or what that looks like as a one-man show. The photos I'm going to share, don't get scared by the photos. They're more, use them for inspiration about and to know what's possible. Right? Because so this first photo you're seeing it's our studio that we use for virtual events in Charlotte. We call it Zoomzilla for a couple of reasons. Yeah, but we have multiple meetings going on simultaneously. The ability to stand, and I was talking about being able to walk back and forth, actually interact with your attendees. Oh, there's Barry. And also a big screen behind them, being able to see a lot of people on the screen. And the nice thing about this, or the ability to bring in a panel of outside speakers. So, it's a really great environment. And this is also something that Zoom allows for. And it can allow for it for you as well. So what I mean by that is, listen, that's for a big event, 3,000 almost people checked in and a lot of people present. If you only have, let's say 50 to 200 people, or you're more like Kelly where you have 30 people at your live event and you're making a $2,000 offer and happy to make $12,000 in revenue, you don't need all of that technology. If you're a one-man show, the beautiful thing about Zoom is you can take your computer, plug in an HDMI cable to one of the ports, maybe you need an adapter, and most of us have a relatively big screen TV somewhere in our house. Well, connect it to your TV, put the grid view up on the television, and now you have a different experience for you as the host. Put yourself in an environment where you're able to stand up rather than sit for 3 days.
Or alternate between those.
Exactly. Yeah. And all of a sudden, those little changes, those little shifts where you can move and you can shift your energy will allow you to show up better, allow you to show up more energized, and allow the audience to feel that, right? Allow you to really interact with them. We spoke with somebody by the name of Danny Inney, who did a virtual event recently, and he had, I don't remember the exact numbers of total attendance.
No, but the interesting thing, I think originally he had 500 and then he had 900. He had doubled his numbers. It was in the same line of what we've been talking about, significantly more people at his virtual event than his in person. It doubled his revenue as well. So
yeah, exactly. Doubled his revenue, almost $1 million, did 900K. It was pretty awesome. Kevin, I see you have a comment about Zoom and audio sync. That's a technology thing. So that comes down to not necessarily using screen share for Zoom, but looking at it with a piece of hardware that allows you to bring everything in. So you sync the audio and the video before it hits Zoom. That's the slow version of what I'm, or the quick version of what I'm sharing. But there's a lot of different ways to overcome that. We played videos, we had music, and you don't, like I said, you don't need all of the technology that we had at our disposal to make all of that happen. You guys can do this. And it's actually something we say a lot when it comes to live events, that you can do this.
Yes.
And really believe that, and see it in stories that.
And I think the great thing we figured out about Zoom is scale, right? So we said earlier, this an in-person format works for 5, 50, 500, 5,000 plus. And the great thing is we're figuring out with Zoom that we can do the same thing, 5, 50, 500, 5,000 plus. So obviously the tech gets more complicated the more you scale, but don't let the tech scare you. Zoom is actually a super simple format that you can use. And if you are a one-man show, consider having an AV tech that you hire for the weekend, someone to support you. AV teams are not working right now. So this may not be true forever, but for sure right now, there are affordable opportunities to get equipment and teams because they are delighted to have an opportunity to get back on the road, to get back in action, because it has been really hard on not just the event teams in this world or the host in this world, but all the vendors that support live events, print, product, audiovisual, all being impacted by this.
For sure. So with that, I know we said that we were going to share the one mistake that most virtual events are making right now.
You see this over and over again.
We really do. But before we do, I actually want to invite you to experience, we want you to experience a virtual event done right. Because one of the things that I think is true, and I said it earlier on, it's hard to understand what we're saying. Like you can hear it and understand it in theory, but to actually go through it and witness it in person is a game changer. So Barry and I have decided at the end of this month, May 29th through the 31st, we're going to be hosting an event, an online experience called The Virtual Event on Virtual Events.
Yes.
And
it's hard to figure out what it's about, right? It's the virtual event on virtual events.
Exactly. And while I don't love the word virtual events because I think it doesn't fully explain what it is, from a marketing perspective, it's easier.
I think it's the most common word we're hearing.
Exactly.
But truly, we've just had so many requests for people asking, what are we doing and how are we doing it? And we've done a few, free trainings like the one that you're part of here today, but really to experience it on a deeper level, even for our hosts, it's been amazing for our hosts that have shown up. They thought they knew how great it was going to be. And then when they actually got there, like, oh, this is so much more than I thought it was going to be. And for attendees, they thought it was going to be awesome to be able to connect and have community and have content, do it from the comfort of their homes. But done right, they were blown away by the interactivity and by the takeaways and by the people that they met there, the community. So that's our goal, is for you actually to experience a virtual event the way we think it should be done. So The Virtual Event on Virtual Events. Not only will we teach you what it is to host a virtual event and detailed how-tos on how to do it, but you'll actually be experiencing it along the way. So everything we teach, you also experience.
Yeah. And as we decided to do this, Barry and I are fortunate enough to have some great clients that we mentioned. I reached out to a few of them and said, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. What should we charge for this? And, generally the answer that we got back was we would pay or either ourselves or for our team to attend this, $5,000 to $10,000. And, I thought to myself, wow, that's kind of exciting. So we've decided to do this virtual event. Let me tell you a little bit about what it is that you're going to learn over the course of these 3 days. So right from the get-go, we're going to go deep on the pre-enrollment or the pre-engagement strategies, because 50% of the success of these live events is getting people to show up. And we kind of covered it broad strokes in today's webinar, but we want to go deep with you and explain to you exactly all of the different pieces and parts that we did to make it happen. And that's not, that by itself is probably a couple of hours worth of content. And there's so much more to it than that. We want to go deep on the check-in process, share some of the scripts that we used for our team and how you can do it as well, whether you're high tech or low tech. You don't have to have a team. You can do this solo, or have your have
your 13-year-old do
it. Exactly.
You got kids home from school, perfect. You can put them on Reg Task.
Exactly.
I say that only half jokingly.
Well, and then we're going to go deep on gamification and ideas for how you can keep or funification, as Barry said,
yes,
how you can keep your attendees present. So once you get them to show up, you then need to get them to stay with you for the entire 3 days.
Thinking through some of the ways ways we know work and avoiding some of the missteps that we know can happen in designing your gamification, your dashboards, and your awards at the end. Even our best host, right out of the box, some of the ideas they have are like, that's actually going to hurt your sales. So we're going to talk about how to structure your rewards, your prizes, your gamification, your dashboard to enhance enrollment versus hurt it.
Well, and again, always thinking about this with the end in mind, right? So one of the things that we really want you to take away from this training today, regardless of whether or not you join us for the virtual event on virtual events, is you always start by reverse engineering. Start with the end in mind. Don't start with, I'm going to host an event. Host with, what's the end result of that event going to be for you and for your attendees? So,
and if you're like most of our clients, it's probably going to be a high ticket offer, some type of coaching program. So a big piece of what we're going to be doing at the virtual event on virtual events is walking you through how to design a high ticket offer and exactly how to place it into the program and exactly how to structure the offer and the all important repitch. A lot of people skip that step, and it's actually one of the most important pieces in both in-person events and virtual events. So we're going to walk you through that strategy and exactly how to incorporate it. Again, whether it's 5, 50, 500, or 5,000 plus, any market, any niche, any language, we have tested it, we have proven it, it works, and we're going to show you exactly how.
Well, and the really neat thing about that, much like some of the strategies that we started this broadcast with, is it works whether it's online or offline. So this isn't just a skill set that you learn for today for virtual experiences, but you learn going forward. And I think virtual experiences are here to stay, yes, especially done right. And when live events come back, you can transition. Exactly. You can transition into live events and still also use the information that you learn over the course of these 3 days and go deep with them. The other thing that we're going to touch on pretty heavily actually is the technology. What kind of cameras do you need? What kind of switchers do you need? We talked about video intake devices. We have a session where we're going to go deep on the tech, whether it's, spending $100 or, well, really, the sky's the limit. And also how to focus on scale, how to allow yourself to go from 30 people to 300 people, from 300 to 1,000 people, from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 and more, because all of that is possible while still maintaining the intimacy that you get from the smaller events. That's not actually possible in a live event, in-person environment, but it is possible in a virtual environment, in an online experience.
To send them to breakouts, much easier for the host to interact with the audience. If you've ever been to an in-person event or even to a concert, think of it that way. The entertainer or the host can see the first few rows, and after that, it's a sea of faces. In Zoom, that's not true. You can see so many more people up close and personal. And if you've ever been to one of those large events, it's easy to get lost in the shuffle, even if you're doing interactive exercises. Not true at a virtual event where we can send you into those breakout rooms where you get high level interactivity at a micro scale, even when the event's at a grand scale.
Exactly. So, lots of content, over the course of these 3 days. I think it's going to be jam packed. Let's actually talk about a couple of other things that we're going to include. And I see there's a couple of folks who are actually on the live stream. I saw Stacy Martino. Welcome. She's already registered for the event.
Looking forward to seeing you, Stacy.
And upgraded to all access. I actually want to talk about this because this is a strategy for you to employ regardless of whether or not you join us. This virtual experience, much like the other experiences that we've done for our hosts and what we're recommending for you, does not come with recordings.
Yes.
Why? It comes back to show up. We want our attendees to be with us the entire time. So same is true for the virtual event on virtual events. There aren't going to be recordings.
Yeah, think about it. If you were at an in-person event, you're not going to tell everyone right when they register, hey, good news, there's a recording of this whole thing and you've got it. As we produce it, we're going to be giving you a recording, or each night you can capture the recording. You'd never have anybody in the session room. They'd be out by the pool and looking at the recording later, or networking in the hallway and looking at the recording later. So I think it has to be the same with virtual events. It's something we really believe in. And so, of course, we're incorporating it into our own event, which is no recordings. You need to be present so that you can get the content and the connection and the community. And listen, it's a gift to you. If you're constantly distracted and in and out of the event, you lose the momentum that comes from stacking the content. Like each session builds on the next, builds on the next, builds on the next. So Super important that you're experiencing all 3 days in sequence so that you can have the aha moment. You can get that connectivity to exactly what the bigger opportunity is for you so that you can have a game plan to actually implement it when you get home.
Let's talk about the two things that we added this morning that
Yes.
Stacy, you're about to find out about, as is, there's a couple of other folks that I saw their names scroll by.
Of course, if you've already purchased a ticket, you're going to get these, so no worries.
Exactly. But we have, as a part of our main course Rush, there's two components that apply directly to virtual events. One of them you heard me talk about briefly was the fact that our clients created a coaching zone and a way for their coaches to interact one-on-one with their attendees. Well, we have a 10-part video series on how to create successful coaching zones, and that product applies both in person and virtual. So we're going to include that. That's a $997 value.
And this is everything we've learned over close to 10 years of running coaching zones, which are basically strategy sessions to increase engagement and ultimately enhance enrollment. So hear this, whether you have one coach and they're part-time, not full-time, or whether you have 10 coaches, whether you're focused on them doing strategy sessions to enhance engagement, or you're ultimately looking at them as sales opportunities to increase enrollment, or a combination of the two, we cover all of that in our micro course on how to design a coaching zone, how to script a coaching zone, how to staff a coaching zone, how to train your coaching zone members. We cover how to lay it out. We cover what to say. We cover what to do. And equally importantly, what not to do. This is over a decade, running 30 plus events a year, over a decade of experience in exactly how this works.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because Stacy is in the chat going, "Yeah, baby," and Victoria's going, "What? That's awesome!" So you're welcome.
Yeah, our clients love it. It has worked really well.
If you think that's awesome, get a load of this. The second product that we're going to include with your live event ticket is a product on, well, why don't you say it? Overcoming objections.
How to overcome objections.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest questions we get, once you know how to design a high ticket offer and make a high ticket offer and close a high ticket offer, is how is your team going to overcome objections? How are you going to overcome objections? And what we've learned over the last 16 years in this space is that it all comes down to, and you can write these down, it's the same for any audience in any language: time, money, spouse, fear, shame, and self-doubt. Those are the 5 objections. It does not matter what space you're in. It does not matter what offer you're making. It does not matter what the price point is. It is going to come down to time, money, spouse, fear, shame, and self-doubt. Those are the objections. And how you can see how all these objections equal time, all these objections equal money, etc. So we have an amazing course on how to overcome objections. We've been using it for 16 years for training our own team and for training our client teams and our client hosts so that you're better equipped to answer objections from the stage, and you learn how to weave them into the teaching and the content that you're doing for the program so that you're solving the objection before it even happens, and you can use it to train your team at the back of the room, whether that's a volunteer, a spouse, a teenager, or a coaching team. It can also be used in the coaching zone. So those two things go really well together. And it is important. You need to understand what objections are there and be confident, because confidence really does matter in a high ticket offer. Be confident in how to overcome them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that value is $19.97. And believe me, our clients will tell you that they'd pay a lot more than that for it. But we know it's such an important component of you being successful with an in-person event or a virtual event that we're including that too.
Yeah. So those are the things that we're including. You have the live event where we're going to be talking not just about not just about virtual strategies from an offer perspective, but also about strategies that work online. So, how to design your high ticket offer. We're going to be talking about pre-engagement strategies. We're going to be talking about check-in and how to actually structure that. We're going to be talking about how to maintain your show up. Once they actually show up the first time, how do you keep them coming back over the course of 3 days, 3 long days? And, people didn't think it was possible, but it is
possible. You can do this.
Yeah, how to scale your event. So, whether you have 30 people or 3,000 people, this stuff works, and how to make it all work. And then finally, we're going to be covering sponsorship and how to pay for your event before it even happens.
And
again.
VIP experiences, basically revenue generation. So sponsorship is one opportunity, whether you have one sponsor, 10 sponsors, 20 sponsors. We're going to talk about how to design the packages and how to virtualize them. So again, these packages can be used in an in-person event or a virtual event, but we're going to talk about how you virtualize them so that you can basically pay for this event before you even have it. The other component that we love, you may not be ready for sponsorship, but VIP experiences. We love a VIP experience because generally, it's an opportunity for you to get closer to your community, to people who want more access to you, and give them a highly specialized experience so that they're getting even more content, even more connection, and an even better sense of community. And again, in an in-person world, this can help pay for your food and beverage minimum. In a virtual world, it helps pay for your event. So it's super easy to implement. We're going to show you exactly how.
So with all of that, we started talking about ticket price. We took what our clients told us, that $5,000 to $10,000 mark. We have our 2 bonuses that are worth about $3,000 ballpark.
Well, listen, I was thinking about this after we decided this pricing, but if overcoming objections helps you get one sale and you're making even a low ticket offer, and we think of a low ticket offers in the 5 to 6K range, you've more than paid for all of this just from one sale, from one thing you learned.
Yeah. So, the first price point that we had laid out was $997. But the reality is we're excited about teaching this. We're excited about doing this. We want to see more people doing great virtual experiences because we really believe that the more people do great virtual experiences, the better off the event industry as a whole will be.
Right. The more people get it wrong, the more it hurts all of us. When we go out and try and explain a virtual event or market a virtual event, if the industry is getting watered down or confused about exactly what that experience can be, it hurts all of us. So we ultimately see this as a big service, which gets to...
The actual price?
No, I was going to say it gets to what most people are getting wrong.
Well, no, why don't you share the price?
Yeah, well, it's just, you share it.
$97.
Yeah.
So,
can you believe that?
Yeah, it's.
I can't. We warred over that one.
Yeah. So it's $97. Join us for the virtual event on virtual events. You get all of the things that we mentioned, the actual event itself, which I think for you to actually, there's obviously going to be a pretty cool swag box that comes with it.
There is.
I gave Barry a budget as we were talking through this, and she blew right past it.
Yeah, it kind of is like when I go shopping a little bit. Like I go out with an idea of what I'm going to be spending, and I almost always do
a little bit more.
Well, but I love swag, and I think so many people get swag wrong. So hopefully you'll agree with us when you get your awesome swag box. But we have designed it to be pretty epic.
It is.
With things that I think you'll be keeping for a lot longer than the 3 days, but you can absolutely use during the 3 days. We've been partnering with our friends at 4Print, amazing folks over there, to create a really awesome box with some awesome swag for you. So that's part of that price point too.
Absolutely. So that's the invitation. We hope you join us. It's May 29th through the 31st. It's going to be starting at around 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And it's going to be going through about...
Actually, that might be one of the best parts about virtual events.
The later
they start at 11 o'clock Eastern.
Exactly.
I personally love that.
And it's going to be going through about 7 o'clock Eastern time each day.
Maybe a little bit longer on day 2. I think we'll probably end up about 7:30.
You have something planned, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. So before we leave, let's actually dive into the biggest mistake that pretty much everybody who's doing a virtual event is doing right now. But now that you've heard this, not you.
Right.
Okay. Most people, when they look at virtual events, are taking what they know from online, which is a webinar or a live stream, and extending them, right? And when they extend them, they're thinking about a few things. They're thinking about their show up rate. Like, how am I going to get people to show up for longer periods of time? They only show up at a rate of 20 to 25% as it is. How am I going to get them to stay all day long? So they wind up chunking up their event into these small little segments, right? So they'll do 2 hours in the morning, and then they'll give a 4-hour break. And then they'll do, a couple hours at night, or maybe they'll do some kind of watch party on Facebook.
Or they're treating them as individual webinars strung together, like kind of assuming the audience won't stick with them. So it's a webinar with a break, a webinar, and then come back tomorrow for a webinar with a break and a webinar, and then come back the next day. So yeah, I think that is a big mistake.
It is 100%. And it is by far the biggest mistake people are making. Now, how do you overcome that mistake? Is I want you to look at these virtual experiences like live events. Right? So a lot of the same things that you would do for live events, you can do online. You can do virtually. You can do exercises. You can do networking breaks. You can do sponsorship. You can keep people with you engaged for long periods of time. It's all of that stuff is what we're going to be showing you at the virtual event on virtual events. Some of it we already talked about today, but that is by far the biggest mistake people are making right now. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And not only are they leaving money on the table when they do that, but the bigger thing that they're doing is they're leaving impact on their on the table. They're having less impact on their attendees by not keeping them with them for the entire event, for the entire experience.
And if you believe in a purpose-driven payday and you believe in impact, not just income, you're doing a disservice to your audience to not create an experience that's going to capture them for all 3 days so that they get all of your amazing content, all of your incredible brilliance. They actually do make a decision on the third day to do things differently and to implement that when they get home. So there's longevity. Your brand has legs, as we like to say. Otherwise, it's just 3 days wasted, right? Like at the end of the day, you want to create an experience that keeps them engaged and interactive and inspired and connected so that they leave a raving fan of you and your brand. And literally the next time you host an in-person event or a virtual event, they're literally singing from the rooftops and recruiting their friends to come with them because they're talking about what an incredible experience it is. That is so critical. And then for you as the host, it's such a gift to you to create an amazing experience so that you're more engaged and you're more interactive and you see the strength and power of your own brand. So nothing's worse than being a host. And by day 2, you're just like, I am exhausted. I'm bored with my own content and I'm bored with the platform I'm using to bring it. Like, we don't want you to be exhausted and overwhelmed. We want you to be free to deliver your best content and be your best self. You deserve that. And so does your audience.
For sure. Now, below this video, you should see a form to sign up. If you don't see that, go to PB, like powered by, pbsage.com/TVE. So that's a lot of letters.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it into the chat.
pbsage.com.
So
/TVE.
TVE, like the virtual event.
Right.
So I've dropped that into the chat. Actually, for those of you who are on Facebook, I'll throw it over there as well.
Yeah, we'll throw it in Facebook too. And I saw the question come across, will we be covering a 1-day? We've mentioned it briefly here, but yes, we absolutely will. We really believe in either a 1-day or a 3-day, not big fans of a 2-day. We'll be covering exactly why at the virtual event on virtual events. And that's true for in-person as much as it is for virtual, but we're going to walk you through the 3-day model in depth and show you how you can condense it into 1 day. So for those of you who have been hosting 1-days or feel like you're not quite ready for a 3-day, you absolutely can take everything we're going to be showcasing here, and just like Kelly, apply it to a 1-day. And again, it works for 5, 50, 500, 5,000 or more.
For sure. So once again, go to PB, like peanut butter, PB.
Powered by.
Sage.com. Yeah, I like peanut butter. Peanutbuttersage.com.
Yeah.
pbsage.com/TVE, like the virtual event. Or if you do happen to see the form right below this video, just type in your first name and email address and click here to register for the virtual event. Stephen Stay is registered and he said he signed up for all access.
Nice.
Good job, Stephen. Actually,
guess what? Your swag box is even better.
Exactly.
I'm super excited about the VIP swag box. If you do upgrade to all access, know that you get a couple extra presents from us.
Yeah, exactly. And why don't we just take 2 minutes? If you guys have any questions as we wrap up, we have a few minutes left. Post them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer a couple questions.
Questions about anything. They don't have to be about the virtual event or virtual events.
Exactly.
Answer any of your questions.
But all access comes with 3 things, and there's a small fee. I'll let you see the video that explains what that is, but I think it's well worth it, to be honest with you. You get the recordings of the event. Those recordings will be available 30 to 60 days after the event. Here's the coolest part of the recordings for how we're delivering them.
This is awesome.
Yep. They are going to be completely searchable. It's part of the reason why it takes a little bit longer.
Thanks to our friends, Stu McLaren and the Tribe team, who developed an amazing product called Searchy, which allows you to literally type in a keyword and it'll take you to every place over the 3 days where that keyword showed up. So if we talk about sponsorship multiple times over the course of 3 days and you type in the word sponsorship, it's going to bring you to exactly that place in the event videos, in the recordings, so that you can go right to that and hear what we said about sponsorship. Yep. Any keyword, it works. It is a revolution, I think. We're so excited. We love it. We use it in our course. Our students love it. We love it. We use it every day.
For sure. Annette, I am going to share with you an answer to your question about breaks in just a second. The other two things that you get in All Access are, number one, Barry and I like to end each day with our favorite cocktail. Yes. And we are going to be hosting a virtual cocktail reception, which is essentially an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, or really an AUA. Ask us anything.
That's true. Yeah, really, truly, anything you want about live events or anything at all, how we built our business, any of those questions. So each night, we're going to wrap up the day with you with our favorite cocktail. You can bring yours and ask us anything. So we'll be doing that on night 1 and night 2.
Exactly. And then the last thing, the last thing that we're going to do is we are going to be providing a 20-minute call to answer your most pressing question as it relates to your first or your next virtual event?
I think of it as an ideas into action call. So I know what happens whenever I go to my mastermind meetings or to a 3-day live event is I take all these notes and I'm excited. I highlight all the things I'm going to implement when I get home, and I start to put those ideas into action. Inevitably, I have questions as I start to think through it that I didn't think to ask in the moment. So post-event, you have the opportunity to ask me or Blue. These coaching and strategy sessions are going to be led by me or by Blue.
One-on-one.
So you'll get one of us one-on-one, and that's for you to ask any of your post-event follow-up questions. So we are there to help you take all the ideas you got and make sure you put them into action, because we want this to stick. We want this to be your breakthrough year where you not only come to the virtual event on virtual events, but you actually take that information and use it to create your own purpose-driven payday.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that was asked
By the way, I think we do a 20-minute consultation. It's generally, we charge $20,000 for 4 to 6 hours. So you can do the math, but 20 minutes is a good value.
For sure. So Barry Baumgartner,
yes.
Let's, why don't you answer, I've lost the name now, but there was a question about breaks and will there be breaks at this event? And this question is yes for us, and also similar to what we've done previously for our other events.
Yeah, you'll see this in your confirmations, but you're going to have a mid-morning break, a lunch break, and a midday or mid-afternoon break. So 3 breaks a day. And we're going to be modeling what we think you should do during your own breaks. So during those breaks, you can not only experience it, you can learn from how we run those breaks, how we send you to break, how we bring you back from break. So absolutely, all 3 days you'll experience that.
Awesome. Daryl, thank you very much for joining us and putting your trust in us for that 3 days. He couldn't say no to a $97 offer. I appreciate that.
It's a pretty amazing deal. And believe me, it will not stay $97 forever. Blue I think there was a little bit of arm twisting that went on behind the scenes with that one, but we do want you to be inspired to come. We want to make it easy for you to say yes to you and yes to us.
Yep.
So $97 today. And again, you won't see that for long. And you'll get all these incredible bonuses: how to run your coaching zone, how to overcome objections, and we'll be designing your high ticket offer as part of the event. So you'll have everything you need to run your own purpose-driven payday. For sure. Steven says that he's excited for what this means because he was actually able to help his homeless shelter replace $500,000 from a fundraiser that they had to cancel, and that was without
what we're teaching.
Well,
So imagine what you can do going
to
forward.
you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love to see that. I think one of the things we'll talk about is how much money you can raise for your favorite charity through an in-person event or a virtual event. We've seen it in both cases, and audiences are incredibly giving. And what's really amazing about this, you get a like-minded community together and everybody gives a little. Some people will give a lot, but even if everyone just gives a little, you'd be amazed at the kind of impact you can have for fundraising for your favorite charity. We will be talking about that during the virtual event for virtual events, but hats off to you, Stephen. Good for you.
Yeah. And then my favorite comment of the day comes from Abraham Devlin, who wants to know if there are any Hulk Hogan fans here.
Does that come from... Why Hulk Hogan?
I don't know, but I love the question, and I'm gonna say yes. I'm a Hulk Hogan fan.
Why I'm laughing is we actually saw Hulk Hogan one time.
Yeah, don't you have a picture? I wasn't there.
We have a picture. Oh no, it was just me. Yeah, that's right. I saw Hulk Hogan. My dad was a big wrestling fan too, and so when I saw him, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Hulk Hogan. I saw him in an airport, got a picture with him, and sent it to Blue.
Yeah, she sent it to me, and I was like,
yeah. And we hardly ever don't travel together.
I know, and this is the trip that I'm not on. So guys, with that, I would just like to close by one more time saying, join us for the virtual event on virtual events, $97. And I don't know. Does it sound really cheesy? This $97 could change your life. But I mean, it really can. And it can change your business if you start implementing the stuff. Even if you just start with the stuff that we taught you on this call.
Absolutely.
You can do a live event. You can do it quickly, and you can do it very, very well. Samberland is also a Hulk Hogan fan. Good job. So
yeah, but Hulk Hogan,
I'm actually going to pass. Yeah, right. I'm going to pass it to Barry because Barry usually closes these things out with a much more heartfelt and appropriate way than I do. Because now I'm thinking about Hulk Hogan and WrestleMania 3.
Well, thanks, Blue. And thank you for joining us on, a Saturday afternoon. We so appreciate having you here. And one of the things that we're most excited about is the opportunity. We have a saying at Sage, which we learned from Fabienne Fredrickson, good friend of ours and a client, the bigger the front, the bigger the back. And I think when COVID-19 first hit, all we could see was a dark cloud. It was a super scary time. This is an unprecedented time, right? We've never faced anything like this globally, and certainly not in the events industry. And when it first went down, I have to tell you, Blue and I looked at each other and we thought, our business may not survive this. And we do 30 live in-person events a year, and one by one, we were watching them fall. But the bigger the back, the bigger the front, right? And so as dark as that was, the opportunity for reinvention, not just for us, but for our clients and for our audiences. And I have to tell you, I've never been more excited about the live event space, because now all of a sudden we truly can have global events. We can have global touch points. We can have global impact, and we can rescue a purpose-driven payday for our clients. And here's the thing that I know to be true. We talk about sales as service and impact before income. We really do believe in the importance of serving your audience first before you sell them. But in our industry, we can't help but talk about metrics, right? It is the measuring stick, marketer math. How much money did you gross from your high ticket offer? But what I want you to remember is not only is that important, and it's probably more important now than it's ever been, so that you can create your own economy, right? Create your own economy with a live event, a virtual live event. Create and help your audiences do the same thing. So that money is super important. But what I want you to remember is behind every dollar sold is a person served. And so it's not just the money you make, it's the people you help. Even if they don't buy your high ticket offer, if they come to your live event, virtual live event, in-person live event, and they go out and do things differently, you're not only changing the opportunity for them, you're changing that potential opportunity for generations of people after them. Blue and I both know this. We're both self-made. We both, created our businesses from scratch and ultimately joined them together to create Sage Event Management. And our lives and future generations of our family are forever changed by the fact that we were able to not only help our audiences, but help ourselves, not have to rely on when are we getting back from furlough, or when do we get a paycheck back, or any of those things that come up when you have a threat like COVID-19. So know that your audiences have never needed you more than they need you right now. They're craving leadership. They're looking for opportunity, and it is not opportunistic to seize an opportunity to serve. When service is at the heart of what you do, sales is always soon to follow. When you serve hard, you sell easy, but the heart of it is always the service piece. So if you're looking to serve your audiences in a deeper and more authentic way, if you're looking to learn how to sell with integrity, if you're looking how to make sure that your live events don't get shelved and you're able to keep them moving in this economy or any economy, join us for the virtual event on virtual events. I promise you, we will not let you down. We will serve you hard. We'll make sure you have lots of things that you can take home and immediately implement ideas into action. There's never been a better time for it. And the thing that we most want you to remember is something we tell all of our audiences every day is no matter where you are, no matter whether you've done a live event before or not, whether this will be your first or your next, we want you to remember you can do this.
You can do this. Bye, guys.
Bye for now.